Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. In hundreds of locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unifydhealing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, May 26th, 2024, as we record this new episode. The Chicago White Sox got swept again, which isn't a surprise, as the Baltimore Orioles are a far better team. That sweep extends the White Sox season woes, as they have now lost 9 of their last 10 games and are 15-39 in 2024. That's a new franchise worst start after 54 games, as they are 2 games behind the pace of the 2018 White Sox. Before Sunday's 4-1 loss, Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan asked White Sox manager Pedro Grifol about the team's start.
The start that this team endured kind of give them just a resolve or a hard shell for dealing with a tough stretch of heartbreakers like we've had the last couple of days.
It's definitely given us some resiliency. I mean, I just said it on another interview. The fact that we're going through a tough schedule right now, which everybody has to go through right away. By the way, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we got to go through it at some point. But the fact that every night, every game, we've had an opportunity to win. It's a credit to these guys and how bad they want it, how they prepare, how they work, how they fight. We just got to find ways to close these games out. We have to.
Garrett Crochet was awesome again on Sunday, but the White Sox hitters could not figure out Baltimore Orioles starter Kyle Bradish, who had the White Sox no-hit through 7 innings, and that no-hitter was eventually broken up by a pinch hit home run from Danny Mendick. Post-game, this is what Pedro Grifol said. Warning, this soundbite is unedited and does contain vulgar language.
All right, I don't have much. Crochet pitched his ass off. We got no hit through 8. We had a pinch hitter break it up. The rest of the guys, not the rest of the guys, most of the guys were fucking flat today. Unacceptable. That's all I got.
When you say flat?
Flat. Period. Major league game. You got to respect it. Pretty simple.
How do you and the coaching staff treat the guys after that?
I'm not going to talk about that.
Why does that happen?
I'm not going to talk about it.
What differentiates what you saw today in the at-bats compared to other games with the offensive strength? Since you compared today?
With the at-bats?
What do you see about the at-bats?
No adjustments. We didn't make any adjustments to this guy.
What do you do tomorrow to prevent that from happening?
You got to come back ready to play.
Would you say he was a good pitcher today? Was he tough out there?
I mean, he was good. He hit his spots, and he mixed it up pretty good. But we still got to make adjustments to it. I'm pretty good guy. I'm good. Thanks.
Well, that's new from Grifol, as he was clearly angry with how Sunday's loss went. Here's the reaction from the White Sox clubhouse, starting with Garrett Crochet.
Pedro just talked about your start and Danny's home run, and then said the team seemed flat.
otherwise. Did you sense that at all?
No, kind of like I just said, we're going against one of the best arms in the league. And I mean, he's got incredible stuff, so it's, I don't know.
This team has gone through difficult stretches before. What do you kind of cling on to kind of get off the stretch of 9 out of 10 that you've just been through?
I mean, we just played a stretch against some really good teams, so I don't think it's necessarily fair to harp on the losses and beat ourselves up too much. We just got to put together full 9 innings of good baseball. Like my outing today, I had a great 5 innings and then made a couple mistakes, and that was the game.
Did Pedro talk to the team afterwards?
Yeah, it's kind of just for the guys.
Then Korey Lee shared his disagreement.
I'm going to let him comment on his statement, and he's going to feel that way, and obviously we're going to have a different feeling. He's entitled to his own opinion, and we are also, and I think it's a valid reason. It's nothing to hide about that, but like I said, he has his opinions, and other people are going to have their opinions.
Finally, Danny Mendick is trying to focus on staying positive, which is the opposite of the tone of Grifol's comments.
No, I mean, everything in here is between the guys is great, So, like I said, they threw some good arms at us, and sometimes it doesn't go our way, but struggles happen, and I think we're just going to have to keep grinding, keep a positive mindset, and then go out there and just give it our all, see what happens.
Again, the 2024 Chicago White Sox are off to a franchise worst start after 54 games. They're on pace to finish 45 on 117. Pedro Grifol's job status should be in jeopardy. But now we have comments from 3 players who disagree with Grifol about their play on the field in Sunday's loss. We saw chaos last year when Keenan Middleton lit the spark that eventually got both Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams fired. Are we heading for more drama? Joining me is the managing editor of SoxMachine.com. It's Jim Margalus, as we gave the day off to James Fegan as his birthday is upcoming, so make sure to wish James a happy birthday. He'll love that on social media. And Jim, a different side of Pedro Grifol post-game. What do you make of his post-game comments and also the post-game comments from Garrett Crochet, Korey Lee, and Danny Mendick?
I guess when it comes to Grifol, what do you make of any comment? The problem with Grifol, I think, up until this point, is that he's been an unreliable narrator. He seems to say what he thinks sounds the best at the time, and then he will hastily revise it or take a while to revise it if need be and pretend like that's the way he's always thought. Even going back to the interference call. With the interference call, first he said that the call was good and the rule was lacking. And then, because that wasn't what maybe, not even what fans wanted to hear, but just like, when it turned out there was discretion, because it really didn't seem to make much sense, the attitude the umpires had with making the call. Then he said that he got mad that he was told that his interpretation of the rule is incorrect and he knew what the rule was and everything. And it just, I thought that was reflective of just how he will revise a sentiment, whether it's a day later, a week later, a month later, and pretend like he always thought it. And so when it comes to him, saying that the team was effing flat and that, most of the team, which is almost saying because he said the whole team, then he said, no, most of the team. That kind of makes you think that, he's giving this some thought and he isn't just shooting from the hip, and he can say, well, obviously I didn't mean the whole team. He kind of baked in that he gave it some consideration as calling the whole or most of the team flat, and the team responds in a way that disagrees with him. Will he go back and say, well, I didn't mean most of the team? He could just try to course correct in a day, and then you're thinking, well, he didn't really mean what he said. He just thought after losing a sweep to Baltimore and losing in a way where they're almost no hit for the third time this year, the third time they were almost no hit because they've been almost no hit in 2 other games. Yeah, I just don't know whether to trust this read from him yet. So I'm giving it a day to wait to see if he actually meant it or if it's just something that sounded good. And when it gets received poorly, And he realizes that while, a lot of these players have no leverage, as a group, the players have plenty of leverage because they're the ones responsible for the product and responsible for making him look good. Yeah, I wonder if that read will hold up or if he'll soften a little bit and, try to get along again, because really they're all handcuffed together on this, this ride in a barrel towards the falls. And, if his head rolls, a lot of people will be, whether it's traded, cut, etc. They're all sharing this very uncertain fate, tenuous fate. And that's the problem with building a roster full of guys on one-year contracts, is that they're not loyal to you. They're loyal to, getting their own agenda achieved. Whether it's, getting more starts, making the most of playing time, finding the right role in the bullpen, they're all trying to get by. And this is where you can kind of see all of these independent goals start to manifest itself in not having a really united front when the manager starts calling out your effort.
I agree with you that Monday morning, when our James Fegan speaks to Pedro Grifol, Grifol is going to take 90 seconds to step back from his comments that he made after Sunday's loss. But I think what we heard after the game was genuine from Grifol. And I do think you're right, Jim. Most of the time, we don't get genuine commentary from Pedro Grifol. He has this buffer that, and Ozzie Guillen made mention this on NBC Sports Chicago in the postgame. Actually, Ozzie applauded Grifol for just being honest about his team and, in a way, calling out his team. I'm sure Ozzie would have called out this White Sox team a lot earlier than Pedro Grifol has. But yeah, it's been over 200 games, and Pedro Grifol finally speaks his mind publicly to the media, and the players disagree. And that's kind of where we're at right now, heading to Monday. And then, yeah, I do think you're right, Jim, that Grifol is going to step back from his comments.
The one thing you can think of is if he doesn't step back, let's assume...
Interesting.
Or let's roll out the scenario where he doubles down. Like, I'm just trying to think of it from all angles because James isn't here, so we have to try to think of what would a third person say. I am curious, if this is if he is feeling some heat, because his record is terrible. His record is 76 and 140, 350 winning percentage. It's hard to survive that. So at some point, I think there has to be an expiration date on this level of winning percentage before you just make the change, even for the sake of making change, go to Charlie Montoya. You're not guaranteed to stick with him past 2024, but you're just looking for a shakeup and a token acknowledgement from your front office that this is unacceptable. Perhaps it is a case where if he's feeling the heat, he wants others to feel the heat too, even if everybody's kind of independently feeling the heat, because this could be the last major league jobs they have. It's all a big mess right now, but I think this was my concern with the whole idea coming into spring training about all of these guys who are going to be pulling on the same end of the rope because they all have something to prove. They all have a chip on their shoulder. They all have to establish their place in the game. And when you have all these guys on one-year contracts, when you don't know who's going to be on this team next year, and most of the team, you don't know who's going to be lasting beyond the year. Like, this is where you get a whole bunch of guys who maybe aren't in the mood for Pedro Grifol if they think they can outlast him.
Well, when a team spirals in season, and this being our 11th season podcasting about the White Sox, we've seen many White Sox teams spiral in season, is when things get ugly in professional sports. And we see it all the time. Coaches lose the locker room or clubhouse. The players openly disagree with those coaches and managers, and they start conveying it to the media. There's friction, there's conflict, and it results in worst play on the field than we're already seeing, and this is already the worst play that we've seen from the 123-year history of the Chicago White Sox. But Jim, we saw this last year when it was clear that Grifol lost that clubhouse because of how things crashed again last July for the 2023 White Sox during their toughest stretch of the season, which we called out, and boy, they crashed nosedived during that stretch last July. I think we have another spark, Jim. There are some White Sox fans, because I mentioned on social media, on Twitter, this idea of a doomsday clock for Pedro Grifol and his time as the manager of the Chicago White Sox. And some White Sox fans don't see that. Their argument is that he's going to stay for the entire season. I don't know, man, because Keynan Middleton wasn't a core player for the White Sox. He gets traded. And boy, like, he started a brush fire. And that brush fire, a couple weeks later, did the unthinkable. Jerry Reinsdorf firing both Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn. And even though Crochet, Lee, and Mendick are trying to stay positive, because to Crochet's point, beating yourself up is not going to help not getting beat up on the field. Grifol is pissed. And now that his public buffer is grinded down, Jim, I think we're going to see in the upcoming series here more examples of disconnection within the White Sox clubhouse. And eventually, not Chris Getz. I'm guessing here, listeners. I think Jerry Reinsdorf is going to make the decision for Chris Getz. And this idea of a doomsday clock for Grifol, I think he's at 5 minutes to midnight. And I don't know what that conversation is going to be internally from the White Sox higher ups, because we could include Tony La Russa into this conversation. And so the higher ups of the White Sox, Reinsdorf and La Russa, to Grifol will be, if this White Sox team, when we record another episode after the Blue Jays series Monday through Wednesday, gets swept again, because that will be 11 out of 12 games that the White Sox have lost. And the only one they won during that stretch is they shut out their opponent. Like, I think we're close to Grifol getting dismissed.
Could be. I think it would take Reinsdorf signing off on it. I think most managers or most owners would let their general managers make the call within reason. You know, probably he wouldn't sign like a Mike Scioscia deal for your manager and then cut him with 7 years left. I think there are some cases where they're extreme cases where owners have to overlap. But in this case, I think this is a pretty standard managerial decision, maybe a little earlier than usual. Sometimes they go to 3 years and they get fired after year 2 or in the start of year 3 because they don't get an extension. Mm-hmm. But this isn't unheard of, like a guy getting halfway to his contract and realizing, nope, he's not the guy. And he wasn't the guy last year and all blew up. And, I think Grifol has been brown nosing, I think is the term we've used, just with him, kissing up to Chris Getz when he took over, kissing up to Jerry Reinsdorf, kissing up to Tony La Russa, saying that he welcomes he's done everything he can, I think, to try to get the decision makers on his side by being very flattering publicly. And so that might buy him some time, and he just might be good at relating upwards and not relating downwards or outwards when it comes to the roster and with the media. But yeah, it's a case where if they know they're going to be making a change after the year, and if the product is as bad as it is, and because they've been making so many changes to the coaching staff and front office player development types all around them, they, when they hired Brian Bannister, that was just rearranging the furniture around Grifol and just saying a little bit like the Office Space, Milton kind of moving him out, taking measurements of where he is, talking about how you're going to reuse the room. And Grifol has to say, they're yeah, it's great having Brian Bannister aboard, great having Josh Barfield, so bright, and on and on and on. And on one hand, it helps Grifol to have, new guys, maybe some guys with some new ideas. On the other hand, might be a little unnerving if you hire Marcus Timms or you hire around him after having a coaching staff that he picked the first time. It does, set everything in motion that they can go with a Charlie Montoyo, because it doesn't matter that Pedro Grifol isn't around as long as Brian Bannister is around. I don't know if any of the guys who are loyal to Grifol, like Mike Tozar, I don't think the White Sox will miss Mike Tozar if
no.
It turns out that, he and Grifol are attached to the hip, and, if he goes, I go, et cetera. So that's why I think, I don't know if I think it would take an extreme losing streak, and we could be seeing one in this gauntlet.
I think we're seeing it right now. They lost 9 out of their last 10 games.
Yeah, but I mean, especially if, they get swept by Toronto, et cetera. And you have this, the Kumbaya thing is starting to break down. that could be what causes it. But yeah, I'm a skeptic that he can last the whole year, because I think there will be a lot of these like losing 8 out of 9 stretches. This is a bad roster. This is a tough league, especially with the AL Central. And I think, Chris Getz probably has to speak to that a little bit coming up, talking about like how he talked about how soft the division was and how that gives you hope. And like, maybe the AL Central isn't as soft as he thought, with Cleveland looking like the best team in the league, and with the Royals right behind them. It's the AL Central may not be the pushover he thought it was. So yeah, it's could get ugly. I think Grifol to this point has done a decent job of not making it ugly, because they could have broken down a lot of ways. But yeah, this I think is where you could see it start coming, the seams starting to rip. And I think when you have pitchers like Crochet and Fedde who can talk about themselves, like I think it's one thing among the pitchers, because they're as good as their line is. Like Crochet can feel good about the way he pitched. Fedde can feel good about the way he pitched and know like, oh, Grifol's not talking about me. I think when it comes to position players, and if he's throwing the position players on their bus, when this lineup is just bad, and they've almost been no hit 3 times this year, and that reflects that just the talent is not there. When you start like demanding more out of the talent that isn't there, that's when you can start getting some absentee efforts that help bury you further. So it's going to get rough, I think, if it isn't already.
I think the camel's back is Wrigley, Jim. Like, that's how soon we could see a change. Because if they don't play better against Toronto, let's say they lose 2 out of 3, we're going to be Milwaukee. And in that series, both Fedde and Crochet are going to pitch. So the White Sox have a chance to win a game against the NL Central leading Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers are playing really well. But in Wrigley, you're going to have Clevenger and you're going to have Flexen. And both of those guys have been struggling as of late. And if you get embarrassed in front of sellout crowds at Wrigley Field, that's when Jerry Reinsdorf cares. That's the series that suddenly regains attention from Jerry Reinsdorf. That's not a lot of time. That's just, 6-8 games. So can Pedro Grifol win over his bosses in the next 8 games? Can the White Sox themselves win more games on the field in the next 8 games? Or after the Cubs-White Sox series, are we talking about Charlie Montoyo taking over for Pedro Grifol as the Boston Red Sox come into town for that 4-game weekend series? We'll find out. We'll find out. But right now, I'm going to stick to it, Jim. There's a doomsday clock for Grifol. It's 5 minutes to midnight. That's how close I think we're going to be seeing a change here. Now, you mentioned the great starts from Erick Fedde and Garrett Crochet. Fedde, fantastic. 6 1/3 scoreless innings. Allowed only 3 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. Garrett Crochet, 6 innings, allowed 3 hits, 2 earned runs, which was a 2-run homer to Adley Rutschman. So there's nothing to really complain about in regards to that. I mean, Rushman's one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in baseball right now. 1 walk, 11 strikeouts from Garrett Crochet. He was electric. And of course, the White Sox lost both games. Starting with Fedde, Jim, after that start against the Orioles, I'm now 95% certain that Fedde is going to be traded before the deadline, because he was that impressive against Baltimore's lineup, and a contending team, especially one in the American League, will want this version of Fedde in their rotation. I don't know if it'll translate, moving away from Ethan Katz and Brian Bannister, but American League contenders outside of Baltimore, maybe even Baltimore, would want Fedde. They'll want this version of Fedde, because this Fedde can start at least a wild card or division series game for you.
Yeah, I think it's the case. Like, it's unfortunate that we're talking about the White Sox trading Fedde, because, so many years the White Sox could have used somebody like him. Both his performance and the performance he's delivering on the contract he signed, because, Rick Hahn tried to swim in these waters, for how many years, signing, 1 and 2 year deals, and just really got nothing on his returns. Like, that's why I think he just got comfortable signing bullpen guys, because if he can only sign 1 year contracts, 2 year contracts, or sign for less than $10 million average annual value, then that gets you in the reliever pool. So you feel good about Kendall Graveman, you feel good about Joe Kelly, and when you try to sign Adam Eaton or like a right fielder for 1 year and such, that just seems like a miserable exercise. So that's why Fedde coming along and doing what he's doing on 2 years and $15 million is, you want to appreciate it longer. And I wish I could make a better case for the White Sox keeping Fedde, because it's fun. It's nice to see the White Sox participate in a new market in the KBO and find a guy that signs for try to get in on a bargain and actually see that bargain through. And so far he's delivering it.
The signing gets an A. In retrospect, that's an A.
And the thing is, he's 31 years old. So it's not like a case where he's just bounced around a bit. He's been blocked. But he ends up being 28, 29. You can start really kind of planning around him, because he has years of team control left. He's a free agent. He's going to be in his early 30s. It doesn't get better than this, probably. So, he's also Scott Boras as his agent. So, good luck signing him to an extension if you feel like this marriage can go on longer. I don't think it's going to be the case. So that's why I think that Fedde, probably in all likelihood has to be dealt, and the White Sox would be smart to do so. But yeah, this is the one benefit of the gauntlet in this tough schedule, is that if guys show up, especially in the starting pitching front or the bullpen front, and Michael Kopech didn't exactly do that with his last outing, but just you can bounce back from it, learn something, etc. But right now I think Fedde and Crochet are the ones doing it, and if he keeps doing it, there might not be a more movable starter, because he has a year of team control. This would be the case if they took Dylan Cease into the regular season. It's kind of the same thing with Fedde. Fedde is not Dylan Cease, but it's the same argument in terms of, we can wait until with a deadline if no team is meeting our price in the winter, because you can still have him for a year after that. So that's why I think Fedde is just so appealing. And the White Sox, I think he has to prove it more and more and more as the summer heats up and he faces more opponents, and teams get a second look at him. Make sure that this arsenal that he has truly is major league caliber, and not just a back end of the rotation masquerading as a number 2 starter right now based on the way he's throwing. But that'll allow teams to be interested if he backs it up. So yeah, it's the White Sox in a good position here. Just a sad position, because it is fun watching him pitch, and it's a cool story.
And they crushed it. In Nashville, when the news came down the pipe, we were actually sitting down with Mike Farron when the news was coming down the pipe. And Mike Farron will be joining me in a special podcast episode later this week as NCAA baseball hits its postseason. So that'll be the next podcast episode, folks. Just a little promo and teaser there. Mike Farron will be joining us. But if we look back at the signing now, I was confused, Jim. All of a sudden I'm watching KBO highlights and not exactly sure how this translates. And Brian Bannister goes on Twitter and shares his thought process and the conversations the White Sox had internally about why they're giving this an opportunity, taking on this risk for Erick Fedde. And what we have seen so far at the end of May, A. They earn an A for that signing. And yeah, to your point, it's disappointing that they're going to be trading him, but I think the offers are going to be too good to be true. They may, maybe get someone in the top 100 between 80 and 100. They're not getting a top 50 prospect for Erick Fedde, but you can definitely drive up the price to get somebody interesting again to throw into the White Sox farm system.
Yeah,
I think the offers are going to be too good for Erick Fedde.
I think they could get a top 50 prospect if he's a pitching prospect.
Okay.
It seems like there's a divide between how teams are valuing position players versus pitchers.
1,000%. I 1,000% agree with you. So okay, we'll see what ends up happening. Orioles manager Brandon Hyde said after Sunday's game, and this This quote comes from Scott Merkin of MLB.com as he tweeted it out. Hyde said about Crochet, quote, "Crochet, that's unbelievably impressive. That's Sale-esque back in the White Sox days. A left-hander throwing from a funky slot at 98 with good secondary stuff. I was really, really impressed with him and his command," end quote. So, should we start drumming up the trade rumors of the Baltimore Orioles going to call about Garrett Crochet, Jim? I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. But that's high praise coming from Baltimore regarding Crochet.
I want to say was it Herb or CHGO had like a poll in terms of like, would you extend Crochet for 4 and 6 year? Like, who says no to that extension? And
Crochet.
Well, yeah, maybe like you never know. Like in terms of a guy having Tommy John surgery, hasn't gotten his huge payday yet. He did get the bonus, but that's a case where like that lasts a little bit. But when you've stared down like a not necessarily career-ending injury, but also just like a case where I don't know what my future is in baseball, starting, relieving, etc. That maybe it has some appeal to him that it doesn't have to other pitchers, but. Remind me of that the article that James wrote for us about Reynaldo Lopez and how good he's been for Atlanta and just
great stuff.
How the White Sox wouldn't have been guaranteed to get that performance if they just moved him back to the starting, because it did take all the lessons he learned along the way from being up and down with the White Sox, having some crises, having a pick me up talk from his wife, that all went into him believing he could start and finding the right team to do it with. It took a lot to make it happen, and so maybe you need to have a change of scenery or other teams believing in you to see it in yourself. But at the end he said, well, they could have paid for Lopez if they wanted to have the performance. Like they could have committed to it themselves, and they just couldn't quite bring themselves to do it, and so that's life. But in the case of like Crochet, like we talked about it before, about being skeptical. He has the trade value you want to see because he has to prove he can do it a full season before teams feel like they're picking up Crochet for the postseason. Almost reminds me a little bit of Carlos Rodon in his breakout year in 2021, where he couldn't get to October in fully functioning shape, and so he couldn't quite deliver. And I think that would be the reservation that teams have trying to pick up Crochet. But if he gets through the whole year, and the White Sox are at this crossroads where do we trade him because he won't be probably a part of the next good White Sox team, or do we pay for him? I think it's a case of everything they've been through, how much do they believe in it? And if Crochet, because they've learned the lessons, both trying to cram him into a relief role that made sense because of his very scant profile of starting and the injuries he had along the way, versus believing kind of like Chris Sale in his first year. You're going back to Sale, first year as a starter, basically telling Rob Ventura to screw the bullpen move, I'm starting, and Kenny's going to have to wrestle me in order to get me into the bullpen because I'm not having it. And there's a shouting match, but ultimately Sale prevailed. In the case of Crochet, I don't think it's gotten to that point where they're tearing shirts off and saying come at me, but he has been very adamant about his belief in starting. And when you see how he's performing, when you see that this conviction that he had in himself being rewarded, and the White Sox open-mindedness being rewarded, just like it's worth thinking about an extension, just because you should have some kind of benefit from all of these lessons you've learned. And if the benefit is just 3 good months of pitching or 6 good months of pitching and then trading, I'm like, that feels like a little bit like running in place, because what are the chances, trading Chris Sale? What are the chances you're going to get somebody back who's as good as Chris Sale? And looking a bit back at that trade, they didn't do it.
Well, from a Crochet perspective, real quick on the extension, do you want to sign an extension with the Chicago White Sox franchise where they currently stand, Jim? I get it, financial security, but we've already seen examples of White Sox players opting out and leaving and losing money just because they don't want to be part of this franchise.
Or I'm thinking like Tim Anderson, or right now with Jimenez and Moncada, these contracts where they can't get a change of scenery as fast as they might need it. And, when you have these option years where you're at the mercy of them keeping you or trading you, or keeping you, hoping to trade you and can't trade you because your market isn't there, it's, there's a little bit of gamble in attaching yourself to this team. So yeah, I don't know if the timing makes sense now. The money probably makes sense to a certain degree, but if Crochet,
yeah, I'm sure you could agree on money. It's the soft areas, as a corporate term. The White Sox front office needs to do they have some work to do to convince Crochet this is somewhere that he wants to be for 4+ years.
Yeah, especially if you don't have like trade protection, because I think like if you could include some trade protection, which the White Sox are kind of loath to do, then maybe you sign just because like, hey, I like working with Brian Bannister. I like working with Ethan Katz. Like this is individually very fulfilling for me. And if I keep doing this and the White Sox are not going anywhere as a team, like I'm going to get traded to a team that wants me and can use me for big, important things. I can see that being, holding some appeal, especially if he just wants to, have one big payday. But there is a case for him. He's already gotten a lot of the way to free agency because of all this time he missed with injuries and being in the bullpen and more or less treading water as a major leaguer. So, when you get that far, you may as well see it all the way through, unless you feel like, because I've been injured so often, I want one big payday to set myself up and my family, et cetera, for the rest of my life and maybe generationally as well.
Well, we're going to take a quick break for a word from our sponsors, but coming up next, Jim shares his observations as the Charlotte Knights were in Nashville. The White Sox take on the Toronto Blue Jays next, and our thoughts around Major League Baseball next on the Sox Machine podcast. This episode is presented by Game Time, who is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can score cheap tickets for the upcoming White Sox home games against the Toronto Blue Jays this week. But this upcoming weekend, we'll be having our first road trip of the season, visiting Milwaukee and having our big tailgate with our friends from the 108 and Chicago Sports Bums. Let's say you have a change of heart and mind and at the last minute decide to join us in Milwaukee. Well, use Game Time to score yourself some tickets for the Saturday, June 1st game between the White Sox and Brewers and join us. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to the Sox Machine podcast. All right, so the Charlotte Knights visited the Nashville Sounds over the weekend, which is close to Jim's backyard. So Jim got a chance to check out the Chicago White Sox AAA affiliate, which means that he got a chance to see Colson Montgomery in action. So Jim, lay it down for us. What was good that you saw? What was concerning? What should White Sox fans know after the few games that you got a chance to watch over the weekend?
Jonathan Cannon was good. Having seen him, back in the minors and, not beating out Nick Nastrini for another audition, and Nastrini hasn't really impressed yet with the White Sox. So you could be saying, well, you got to show something from Cannon if you really want to have kind of AAA pitching depth before you get into that Birmingham stuff. Cannon pitched 6 strong innings. The contact started getting loud in the last inning, but otherwise he was good. Kind of doing his thing, not really striking out guys, but I don't know if his future is as a strikeout guy. It seems like he keeps trying to invent an approach or pitches to get more swings and misses, and I kind of think his ceiling is more like a 4th starter guy who can throw pretty hard and keep it off the barrel for 4 innings, and then you start seeing where he goes from there. He's living up to kind of what I thought he might be so far in that regard. As far as the rest of the roster, it's not a good team. And, we're seeing, I think there's a good reason why. One is that the White Sox have already dipped into Charlotte's roster a lot. Also, it seems like the White Sox are withholding talent from Charlotte with Birmingham. They're really trying to keep this bubble in Birmingham. They did go directly to it for Brian Ramos, but instead of promoting Drew Thorpe to Charlotte because Noah Schultz is in Birmingham, they're going to this 5.5-man rotation where Schultz pitches on Saturday, and the starter who was originally lined up for Saturday just piggybacks on him. Like on Saturday with Schultz making his Double-A debut, with Schultz for 4 innings, then Jairo Uriarte through 5. And most teams wouldn't really do that, or maybe see a purpose in doing that, especially when Thorpe has experience, and basically every starter in Birmingham has experience and has logged a fair amount of innings to where they don't need their workload managed. So it's an odd fit, and it really seems like they're trying to preserve this Birmingham bubble for at least the half. So that's why Charlotte is just kind of a flimsy roster at this point. Zach Deloche came back. I think that helps a little bit. It's where he should be right now, and he came back to Nashville, had 3 hits, looked pretty good, so that was good. Colson Montgomery, only a couple games, he DH'd 1, but the thing that was fascinating to me with watching Montgomery is James talked to Montgomery, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and talked about his adjustment to AAA and with the automated strike zone, how he's struggling with it, or at least struggling to get used to it. And he's a guy who is involved in a lot of challenges when it comes to the strike zone because he is so disciplined, because he will wait 4 pitches before swinging if it's not to his liking, if he doesn't like offering a shadow of the zone pitches. I guess you do set yourself up for a lot of challenges because either the pitcher or catcher doesn't get a call that they think is on the zone and it's called a ball, or because Montgomery didn't swing at a 2-2 pitch he thought was barely out and gets caught looking. So I think he was involved in 3 challenges in 2 games, and seeing him struggle with that, I get it, because if you are used to coming up to this point, either getting the benefit of the doubt for a pitcher misses with command, and because the catcher's mitt moves so much having to catch that pitcher, you get that call. All of a sudden, you don't get that call. That is a little bit different now. So I can see the battle, but based on looking at how he moved, and I talked about this last year at various points, having seen Montgomery and thinking he just kind of looks stiff, or not giving it his all after the oblique and back issue, and thinking is he still playing through it? And he does seem to be moving better. The swing is more aggressive. The bat seems to move faster. Ripped a couple of foul balls and thinking oh, there's that swing I hadn't seen last year. So I think he's doing fine, especially, age for level, but I think, there probably is a, finer points battle going on, especially that I think this automated strike zone in the challenge system kind of exacerbates, because when he gets a call, I think it was 2 out of 3, he got the call in his favor and it was overturned. I can see that kind of, rolling up on him and being this is a way to get in a slump, is when you're seeing a strike zone that the umpire is seeing, and then all of a sudden the umpire no longer sees the strike zone the same way you do. And you don't know it until you watch the video board and see where that pitch ended up, the Hawkeye technology. I imagine that can be tricky.
Colson Montgomery on the road this year, because again, when it comes to AAA stats for the White Sox players, you really have to take the numbers at home with a grain of salt. In Charlotte, Colson Montgomery sitting 250 with a 350 on base percentage, but he's slugging just 382. Colson Montgomery only has 5 extra base hits in Charlotte. A little concerning. On the road, Montgomery's hitting 200 with a 328 on base percentage, and he's slugging 390. He's hit for more power on the road than he has at home. All this tells me, really, is that Colson may need the full season with the Charlotte Knights. He may, at least the beginning part of 2024, here in late May, he's not pressing Paul DeJong. Colson Montgomery is not playing well enough in AAA to seriously challenge Paul DeJong's spot on the roster. something that we talked about, something that we were hoping for before this season, that Colson Montgomery can light up AAA. We have serious conversations by Memorial Day. Should Montgomery replace Paul Dion as the everyday shortstop? That's not happening. And I'm hoping 2 months from now, when we revisit this conversation in August, when we do get closer to that date, that the White Sox can call up Colson Montgomery and he retains his rookie eligibility for the 2025 season, he's a better overall hitter. But I can definitely understand, like, from your viewpoint and your reports, watching him in Nashville, that he's still going through an adjustment period. And that's totally fine. He should be allowed to have that adjustment period. But he's not knocking on the door right now to join the White Sox in the majors.
That should be okay.
It's
okay. I think the problem is that with the White Sox not really having much on the 26-man roster to build around, a lot of our conversations for the next good White Sox team, he's leading the conversation. Like, it's when Colson Montgomery arrives, and Ramos, and the Edgar Caro, and the Birmingham pitching staff, then you'll start to see things change. If he's not leading the charge, if he's part of it, do the White Sox have that anchor player to really ground the whole next wave of talent? I think that's really the concern. But individually, he's young. He's still short on reps a little bit because of the time he missed last year, and he's been aggressively promoted and handled it pretty well. So he should be allowed to adjust. But just based on where the White Sox are talent-wise for the organization, you'd really like to see a little bit more just to make the conversation easier versus I'm not sure how good Montgomery is going to be right away, and will he need a couple of years to figure out major league pitching, and on and on and on, which is unfair to Montgomery, but such it is. Such is the case of the White Sox, that they're so bad that it's going to be unfair to a lot of people just because of how poor the product is and how many things need to go right in order for this thing to turn around faster than it looks.
Yeah, because he's got the savior, right? He's got the savior tag. He's going to save the White Sox franchise. He's a top 25 prospect, depending on the outlet. He's just not performing like a top 25 prospect in Major League Baseball right now. Again, that's fine. It's just 44 games in AAA. But if he's hitting this poorly in August, I'm really going to ramp up and start pounding the drum that the White Sox need to go sign Willy Adames in free agency. Like, you may not have...
Or just sign Paul DeJong again.
Yeah, you may not have your anchor at shortstop for 2025. What we were hoping was that Colson Montgomery could take the torch and lead the 2025 White Sox as your rookie shortstop on opening day. He still may not be ready to go. So, again, it's just 44 games. We're not, hitting the panic button. But, yeah, in the next 44, I'd like to see a higher than 724 OPS. I'd like to see a slugging percentage that starts with a 4, especially when you're hitting in Charlotte.
Well, I mean, that's one of the tough things about the Knights right now is that they're only slugging 400 as a team in Charlotte. They're bottom 4 in the International League, and it's only 20 points higher than their slugging percentage on the road. So the whole team is not really hitting or taking advantage of Truist Field. And it's kind of remarkable that they're not as bad as they were last year, but we saw that last year as well. First half, they were pretty game despite having so many players required by the White Sox to where I think they were 10 games under 500, I think, in the first half, something like that. And it felt like they were keeping it together. They were doing their best. And then the wheels came off in the second half because the trade deadline hit. The White Sox shipped out, 7 players or whatever it was. And, all of a sudden, 7 players from Charlotte were needed, and they were just getting by on the waiver wire to fill out the Knights roster on a week-to-week basis. That could be the same case this year, and maybe this is just history repeating when it comes to the original roster doing okay, faring well enough, but it's only a matter of time before that kind of collapses and Birmingham is preserved because for reasons. And it's kind of funny, like thinking about Grifol and thinking about just potential replacements, and Charlie Montoyo seeming like the interim label, but not somebody who's going to get the job long term. Is part of me wonders. I'm just going to throw this out there in case there's any merit to it. Like, are the White Sox propping up Birmingham right now to make Sergio Santos look really, really good?
You might be onto something. You might be onto something, Jim. Wouldn't be the first time the White Sox ever did something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll see.
Like, I like him better than Justin Jerschley in terms of like somebody who could be a credible major league manager at some point. Like,
I wonder if Jerschley was a Rick Hahn guy, and now with Hahn not part of the organization, he doesn't have that cheerleader in his corner.
Well, I think it was an interesting experiment, but having seen Grifol, like, who's never been a major league, he didn't get to the major leagues as a player. I think you have to be very careful about having a manager who can gain respect of a clubhouse while not being not having major league experience. And I wouldn't want to see the White Sox go that route 2 years in a row, or 2 managers in a row. And it could be a Rick Hahn thing, or it could be a case where just there are some guys who are just minor league managers their entire careers, and that could be Jerschley, because I think he just got to A-ball as a player. So the fact that he's gotten to AAA as a manager is pretty good for him relative to experience. But I think Santos would be the guy who would be more of a credible major league manager based on the winning he's done so far, experience he has as a player, and just perhaps raves. I know the White Sox like what he's doing so far. I enjoyed talking to him the time I talked to him, and hopefully will again when Rickwood comes around. But yeah, it's just something I had rolling around my mind, and so I may as well let that thought loose and see if there's anything to it over the next weeks and months.
Our friend Beefloaf over from the 108 wrote a post recently about 3 managers that he would like the White Sox to consider replacing Pedro Grifol. He's with you on the Sergio Santos bandwagon. So you're not alone, Jim. There are others out there that are already looking at Sergio Santos as maybe a future candidate for the White Sox managerial job. Now the White Sox continue playing games, unfortunately. They're still home. Hopefully the weather holds up a little bit better than it has on Sunday over Memorial Day weekend. The Toronto Blue Jays coming to town. And for this podcast episode, it's a quick turnaround, as Steve Stone would say, as the first game is going to be on Monday at 1:10 p.m. Central Time. The Blue Jays. This seems like on repeat. Like, the White Sox just played the Blue Jays. We recently just had a podcast episode previewing the Blue Jays. We talked at great length. Oh my God, the sky is falling on the Toronto Blue Jays, and they win 2 out of 3, and everything perks up. Well, they lost 3 straight games again. They're 23-29. They're still last place in the American League East. The sky is falling again on the Blue Jays. They are a bad road team. They're 11-17 on the road this year, and they lost a crazy game to the Detroit Tigers. They were down by 5. Then they were ahead 11-9 in the 8th inning. Then they gave up 2 runs. They went in, and then in the bottom of the 9th inning, the Tigers hit a walk-off 3-run homer to win that game 14-11. That's how that pretty much that game sums up the Toronto Blue Jays 2024 season. Your pitching problems for this series, it's not great for the White Sox. Chris Bassett against Nick Nastrini. Let's see if Nastrini can actually strike somebody out this time. Tuesday and Wednesday are night games. These are at 6:40 p.m. Central Time. Kevin Gausman will be making the start. The White Sox did not see Gausman last week in Toronto. Mike Clevenger will get the ball for the White Sox. Wednesday night, Alek Manoah, it's been hard to tell what kind of version Manoah is going to be on the mound for the Blue Jays. But Chris Flexen really could use a bounce-back start. He'll be opposing Manoah on Wednesday. And from a White Sox perspective, Jim, one, I'm curious on how this team bounces back on Monday after Pedro Grifol's comments. And maybe they light Chris Bassett up and they come out energized. Maybe they come out flat again and they get shut out, or Bassett actually completes a no-hitter. But boy, like that Tuesday night game with Mike Clevenger, and again, just the topic itself sparked so many comments. Clevenger has not been good. Clevenger can't get through 5. And if he can't get through the 5th inning again, what are we doing here? Because he was supposed to be someone that you could depend on eating innings, and he's not doing that. And at some point, it's just not worth it. You got to either move on and have somebody else take those starts so you could see what you have, because Clevenger is definitely not part of any type of long-term future for the White Sox. So when it comes to this particular series, I'm curious on how Monday goes. But man, if Clevenger bows out again before the 5th inning, Jim, my arms would be up in the air. I don't know what the White Sox are doing.
Yeah, it's a fraught series for both teams, because we talked about it before with the previous Toronto series, how it feels like John Schneider could get fired at some point during one of these series, just because how poorly the White Sox are playing, how poorly the Blue Jays have been playing, and if the White Sox somehow get the best out of the Blue Jays 2 out of 3, then where do they go from here in Toronto? So that's why I don't think Schneider's out of the woods yet. When you win a series against the White Sox and some struggling hitters like Bo Bichette perk up, and then all of a sudden they get beat by a Tigers team that's struggling itself, it's back to square one or square zero maybe if you're even more behind than that. So yeah, it's. The Blue Jays certainly have something to play for, but you look at these 3 pitching matchups, Nastrini especially, like that last start was really rough. Felt like he was wearing it a little bit. Multiple auditions that don't go well. Then I think it's only natural that your name starts being synonymous with like losses almost, or like failure, and just it's really hard to overcome that kind of first impression, second impression, or whether you just keep bolstering that first impression to make it harder to override. But yeah, Grifol picked the wrong time, or maybe like just the worst possible time to say like, yeah, he's up for the foreseeable future. And then he gets lit up and doesn't look like a major league pitcher. So it's a case where, his words have a way of aging as poorly as anything. And it could be a case where Nastrini just proves him wrong immediately, once again, facing the same team, and getting lit up once more. So kind of worried for him.
Yeah, we have to now switch over to MLB. So behind the scenes, we are just getting this breaking news. The Atlanta Braves conducted an MRI on Ronald Acuna Jr., who left Sunday's game due to a non-contact injury. According to the Atlanta Braves, Ronald Acuna Jr. is now out for the season. That is a devastating injury news to the Atlanta Braves. Bring this back to the White Sox. I have to imagine the Braves are calling the White Sox about Tommy Pham. Like, that seems to be a pretty easy transition, and the type of situation where the White Sox move Tommy Pham sooner than later is this type of devastating injury. And Tommy Pham's experience, especially last year in the World Series, put him into right field for the Atlanta Braves. Like, that's the idea that I have now with Acuna Jr. out for the season, Jim. Like, does that make sense to you? Like, maybe Tommy Pham's not even with the White Sox in this series.
Maybe. It feels like they still have Adam Duvall. They still have like 4 outfielders they're rotating through. So maybe not the immediate crisis that it is, there would be for other teams. But he is a fit just because he doesn't need to play center field for him. Michael Harris is playing center field for them. So he can play left field. He can play right field. He can, platoon with Kelenic if they want him to, or they can, have him play every day. It is the kind of fit, but given that Duvall is there, I think he's healthy. I think everybody's healthy besides Acuna. That they have enough outfielders to start, and I don't think there's any bleeding that they really need to stop. I think it's more a matter of like the Phillies and the start the Phillies are off to. Right. I think the Braves are 7 out or 6.5 out. What's the standings here? 6 out, rather. It is a case where, if they want to try to make up ground in the Phillies faster than usual, maybe you can see them make a move sooner than teams usually do, but I don't know if it's that pressing, just because they might look at Duvall and say like, he's more or less, he got a guaranteed contract and Pham didn't. So like, they must have like a kind of evaluation among themselves saying, if we get Pham, what's to say that he's guaranteed to outproduce Duvall and we just have a glut of outfielders who are just not quite cutting it?
Well, Duvall has been bad. Kelenic has been bad. I mean, Tommy Pham is way out hitting Adam Duvall.
Oh yeah, I mean, but I'm just talking about like because they, every team had the choice to sign Pham, and the White Sox ended up signing him. So I just wonder if it's still too soon to feel like Pham is going to help them in the long run, versus the White Sox getting Pham's best baseball of the year and feeling like, we don't want to commit ourselves to Pham immediately. Like they have bodies, which I think is if they didn't have bodies, I think Pham would be more pressing right now to acquire. I can't see your point. I just
I thought the whole idea with Duvall and Kelenic was this platoon situation, right?
Yep. So they will be short. They'll probably need help. I just wonder, because Pham signed so late and every team had the ability to acquire him, I just wonder if it's going to take a while for his market value to rise because, the league seemed to have the same read on him, which is not a difference maker.
Yeah, poor Ronald Acuna, man. I mean, he missed significant time in 2021. He played 159 games last year and put up one of the craziest seasons ever in recent Major League history, winning the MVP. And he had a slow start. There was some rumors from Brave spring training that he wasn't exactly healthy during spring training. He was only hitting .246 with a .348 on base percentage, but the power depth for Acuna really dropped. He was slugging just .356 for the season before getting hurt, and now he's out for the rest of the season in his age 26 season. So that is pretty devastating news for Atlanta Braves. That's why I slightly disagree. I agree with your point when it comes to how much are the Braves paying attention to the Phillies and that they still want to be within striking distance of the Philadelphia Phillies, because the Braves are now 6 games back of the Phillies in the National League East. They have a healthy buffer when it comes to the wild card, but if they have aspirations of winning the East, I think they're going to need help sooner than later. And I wonder if the Braves do come calling for Tommy Pham and just get that right fielder now.
Yeah, it would be funny if Grifol talks about like the team looking flat and all of a sudden Chris Getz trades Tommy Pham. Like, well, all right, you're down a hitter. Now what are you going to do?
And I think I want you to chime in on this. Because you tweeted this out. So Jose Ramirez, folks, is leading the majors in RBIs. He currently has 52 RBIs this season. Andrew Vaughn leads the White Sox with 18. Andrew Benintendi, Paul DeJong, and Gavin Sheets have 17 RBIs. So if you combine those 4 players, they have 69 RBIs this season, which is only 17 more than Jose Ramirez has by himself. And again, 54 games into the season, a third of the season done, the White Sox don't have a hitter with 20 RBIs, which is incredibly depressing. And that means that Andrew Vaughn is only on pace to have 54 RBIs this season. So, Jim, has Jose Ramirez already earned more RBIs than the 2024 White Sox leader will have after 162 games?
I would hope not. It feels like, we're seeing extrapolating the world's worst sample, and feels like somebody's got to get above 60. But yeah, Ramirez is up to 52. So that's the same as, Benintendi, DeJong, and Vaughn combined, 52. And that's just bad. But, RBI is, while not a stat you can, base entire player's value off of, I have respected the RBI for being like a stat indicating like how fun a player is or like whether the player is watchable. And it's tough to have like a bad 100 RBI season. There have been bad 100 RBI seasons, but it usually comes down to either the OBP not being that great or not having a defensive position. But in terms of like them coming to the plate, like action happens. They tend to, have the bat to ball skills to get runs home in a way that makes useful contact. So even if they are getting a ton of chances, they're not wasting it. They're not striking out a ton. They're making stuff happen. So I consider RBI as a making stuff happen stat. And it makes sense with the White Sox that, they're not making stuff happen. Like, there's no individual who excels at making stuff happen. Paul DeJong probably the closest because he leads the team with 7 homers. And now that Jimenez is on the shelf for 4 to 6 weeks, he's first with 7. Then you have Andrew Vaughn with 4. Korey Lee has 4 as well. So, I mean, like, the home run stat is going to be just as brutal, I think, as the RBI stat when it comes to who's leading the team and how down the list that player is on the league leaderboard for home runs and RBIs. Like it's bad. And RBIs, I think, are good at painting that just as like nobody's bringing runs home, even if they're just scoring themselves. They're not doing it all that often.
The Guardians are absolutely crushing with runners in scoring position. Jose Ramirez has an OPS over 1,000 with runners in scoring position. Jose Ramirez is hitting .358 with a .410 on base percentage and slugging .679 with runners in scoring position. He's had 53 at-bats. He's only struck out 4 times in those situations. Andres Gimenez, a 1,200 OPS. Andres Gimenez with runners in scoring position, Jim, is hitting .468. That cannot be sustainable. That cannot be sustainable. And now I'm going to break my own heart, and I'm going to look over at the White Sox hitting with runners in scoring position. And because we know the White Sox focus so much attention on situational plays.
Yeah, the Guardians' OPS is 300 points higher with runners in scoring position.
With runners in scoring position?
886 to 585. Compounding that, the White Sox have the second fewest chances with runners in scoring position. Only the Mariners have fewer plate appearances with runners in scoring position. So,
wow. Yeah, Andrew Vaughn with runners in scoring position is hitting .234 with a .315 on base percentage, slugging .340. And he leads the team in RBIs. That's a .655 OPS. Jose Ramirez slugging percentage with runners in scoring position is higher than Andrew Vaughn's OPS with runners in scoring position.
Yep.
Ah! Come on. Oh, and that is your stat of the show. That's why things are going so well for the Guardians and so poorly for the White Sox. Jim, I'll let you quickly wrap it up with what else is catching your attention around Major League Baseball.
Well, besides the AL Central, because I am a little bit of a broken record in that regard, trying to figure out how good the Royals are, and the Royals went 8-1 and somehow lost a game in the standings over their last 9. Like, that's just remarkable. And it's maybe the one reason right now to be a little bit skeptical is like they're throwing their best at the Guardians, and Guardians are not blinking. So what happens if regression does come into play, or like they can't get as much as they're getting out of Perez and Witt? But for the time being, still feisty, good, etc. Hats off to the Royals. Jose Abreu also comes back this week. And given that the Astros have been playing a little bit better without him, how does he look? And if he continues looking the same, what do the Astros do? And I think this is, I mentioned this before, but something I'm following. And this is probably a telling week. I think the one thing in the Astros' favor is that nobody's running away at that division. So they do have a little bit of time to try to take every opportunity to try to get some production out of Abreu so they can have the deepest possible roster. But I imagine if he has another week or so that looks like he looked before going to the minors, how much time does he have left? And is it kind of like a Pedro Grifol thing, except a lot more expensive, but cutting a guy halfway into a 3-year deal?
The Astros caught the Rangers in the standings. That's not good news for the Rangers. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries, but with the way that the Astros started this season, Seattle and Texas did not capitalize on that poor start by the Astros. So here we go again. Here come the Houston Astros. Big series to watch if you get sick of the White Sox. The Kansas City Royals are visiting the Minnesota Twins. The Twins, who would be in the postseason if the season ended today, they're 28-24. They're 5 games back of the Royals. So the Twins really need this series. So let's see who's more real, the Royals or Twins this week.
Yeah, and both teams have questions playing good teams. The Royals haven't done it very often. Twins have done it a fair amount and haven't been that good at it. So kind of 2 bum slayers going head to head. And I think that probably means that it's inconclusive, but I think it's one, like you said, in a way for one team to make a statement at the other team's expense.
And the Guardians are going to Denver. They're facing the Rockies. So the Royals need to keep winning. I feel so bad for them. They're 8-2 in their last 10, and they lost a game in the standings because the Guardians have won 9 straight games. And the Royals, despite having a .630 winning percentage, which is fantastic. 2.5 games back at the Guardians for first place in the American League Central. That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. We all hope that you have a wonderful Memorial Day on Monday. Again, it is a quick turnaround. You could always revisit this podcast episode, especially if the White Sox and Nick Nastrini are struggling to keep the Blue Jays off the scoreboard like last week in Toronto. You can subscribe to the Sox Machine podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the podcast on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. If you do listen to the podcast over on our YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. You can follow us on social media. We're at Sox Machine. Follow James. He'll be covering the games again for us this upcoming series against the Blue Jays. He's at JR Fegan, and you can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. You can also help support Sox Machine and gain full access to our coverage of the Chicago White Sox by signing up at our Patreon at patreon.com/Sox Machine. Jim and James have been crushing it when it comes to writing and the features they have been doing, especially James as of late when it comes to the White Sox pitchers, which is one positive thing that's happening so far in the first third of the 2024 season for the White Sox. So to gain access to that type of coverage, entire access, and we also have other tiers of support as well, giving you additional benefits to be part of a monthly Zoom call with James and Jim to ask them informally what the hell is going on with the White Sox, participate in the P.O. Sox mailbag. We also have a couple spots open in our Veterans Committee, our VC group that gets part of a text group with Jim and James. So if you want more access to our access of the Chicago White Sox, go to patreon.com/Sox Machine and sign up today. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
Everyone is talking about magnesium. It's all you hear about. But why? What do we know about magnesium? Well, magnesium is the number one mineral that 75% of Americans are deficient in. If you are a woman over 35, magnesium will help you rediscover balance, energy, and vitality. Magnesium supports more than 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including those involved in hormonal balance. From functional medicine doctors to mental well-being and female hormone experts, we all know that magnesium is the one mineral to improve all aspects of well-being and health. But which one? Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, the trusted choice recommended by leading experts with 7 best-absorbed forms of magnesium to ensure your body receives the support it needs for overall well-being. Go to bioptimizers.com/balance today and use code BALANCE10 for 10% off. Support your journey to wellness at bioptimizers.com/balance. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, your foundation to optimal health and vitality.